you to all of you for joining us on day 2 of NDTV World Summit, and I welcome all my guests on stage as well. Now, there is a growing movement towards sustainable living with people not just making environmentally conscious decisions, but with companies also investing in sustainable growth. In this session, we'll focus on environmental, social, and governance framework, also better known as ESG, where companies, in fact, are focusing on this, and we'll explore the vital intersection of profit and purpose. Our esteemed panelists bring a wealth of experience from various sectors to this discussion. I am joined by Gagandeep Sethi, Senior Vice President, Integrated Operations and Sustainability and Responsibility for Pernod, India. Mustafa Wajid, Co-Founder of BILLIONe, which is, of course, a clean mobility platform. And Mr. Ajay Pillai, Partner, Sustainability and Climate Change at Deloitte. Thank you all for joining us on this discussion. Starting with you, Mr. Sethi, what are some of the sustainability goals for Pernod, and how do you merge profitability with purpose, and how is ESG one of the foundational blocks when you do that?
Thank you, Tanima, and it's a pleasure to be part of this panel. For Pernod, globally, we have a very comprehensive ESG program under the umbrella name, what we call as Good Times from a Good Place. It is super aligned to the ESG principles and the UN Sustainable Development Goals with its 4 elements, core elements of nurturing the terroir. Terroir is a French word, and what it means is the terrain, where the land, the Mother Earth, from where we draw all our resources. And we, being a company in the alcobev sector, it's grain to glass. So the starting point is the grain from the land. So everything that we do while consuming those resources, we have to ensure we restore back the balance of the earth. The second most important element is around circular making, right? So while we produce products which delight our customers and consumers, we do it in a sustainable manner, right? In terms of maintaining the circularity, end-to-end value chain, right from the beginning, that is our backend, which is our suppliers, to the entire processing, which happens in our manufacturing facilities, and then the downstream in terms of the customer and the consumer, right? So that's the second element. The third element is all around valuing people. And that's the social cause, again, aligned to the ESG principles, where diversity and inclusion is a big impetus. And we are fully committed in terms of increasing the inclusion of gender in our workforce as well. And so those are the elements. And what India draws out of those elements is the cascade effect, right? So whether it is carbon neutrality, we are a water-consuming product in terms of managing our water balance and hence our water targets. And also many steps that have been taken, which obviously will be alluded in the session for sure.
Right. Mr. Mustafa Wajid, if I can draw you into the conversation now, how is BILLIONe merging ESG into its core business model?
Yeah, thank you for that. Ellerigu, namaskara. When you look at the environment issues as well as energy security issues, the 2 big elephants in the room are fossil fuels which are used for generating electricity, and the other one, which is equally large, is fossil fuels that are used for transportation. And at BILLIONe Electric, we are trying to address, and hopefully we'll do a good job of it. We've already started deploying electric trucks and as an electric truck platform for logistics. So by bringing down the carbon emissions in the transportation sector, by the way, half of India's diesel consumption happens on the highways. And that's a very, very important thing to remember. So we are at it, and we believe that decarbonizing the transportation sector at one level is our corporate objective. And at BILLIONe, we would like to see how to reduce not just the decarbonization, but also make this transportation more sustainable. Thank you.
Mr. Pillai, if I can have your point of view now. Of course, the companies are going to discuss further on how they ensure that they are following ESG principles when in their business models. But what are some of the challenges you have seen firms facing when following ESG, and does it differ across sectors?
The key challenges I can put up top 3 or 4 challenges that I feel that the companies face. Number one is the quality of data and availability of reliable data to report on ESG. It requires a proper process to be followed at the operational level to have good data which can be reported. So the quality of data is right now very dependent on how tedious you are with the processes that you have in place, and it is doubtful at many places. Number two is the awareness level and expertise within the system for ESG to know that what is exactly expected from them to actually go out and report in ESG. So there are not many senior leadership members who are tuned to or aware of sustainability to the extent that is required. I'm not saying it is like that for everybody, but there are efforts being done for that. So, and third is the intent. As long as you believe that ESG is one more thing to be done, and the intent does not come from the top management that we really believe in ESG, it will always remain, a sidelined effect. So the quality of ESG will always be a challenge.
Right. We'll discuss further in terms of regulations and policies as well. But coming back to you, Mr. Sethi, how is Pernod Ricard India innovating its production processes in order to align further with the ESG goals?
There are various phases to it or elements to it. The first one is it starts with the design. Innovation to design the product, the service that is for the offering, right? And much work starts there. We've aligned our entire innovation process, the stage gate, in terms the right decisions around ESG happen at the right time, which is stage 0 and 1, and not after or post you've launched the product, right? So that's the starting point. And then obviously many examples of that, right? And many of the industry firsts, right? In terms of you'll have to push the scale there, especially some of the initiatives that we've done right again from the back end. Sustainable sourcing, right? In terms of our product is primarily ethanol, right? And ethanol can be sourced from various sources, designed to sustainable value. So degrammage, so primary packaging for us is glass bottles. It's one of the most sustainable, but it is highly intensive from energy standpoint when you manufacture glass. Innovating in terms of reuse. Responsible consumption is obviously reducing the consumption, is also reusing as much you can reuse, right? So one big initiative, again, is around reuse of our bottles, which we call taking it back, the reverse logistics, washing them, bringing them to that impeccable quality, and reusing that. And for consumer, they won't be able to make out whether it is new or reused, right? So it has a huge, so that's also innovation of a sort. Green manufacturing, I mean, we've taken huge strides. One big switch from fossil fuels to biomass in our own facilities. Our group target on scope 1 and 2 reduction, which is carbon emission, which is due to burning of fuels in our own manufacturing facilities. Our group target is around 54% we have to achieve as per our SBT 2030. India is already sitting at 94%. So in many of these targets or objectives, we are leading the group because India is a huge volume. India is a huge consumption pool, and it has a huge impact and bearing on our group performance, right? So hence we are taking the lead in that aspect. Then using technology and innovation in our processes, right? Designing our processes the right way so that we conserve the resources and we avoid wastages in the entire value stream. There we use technology also. So all our lines and our production processes are internet connected, IoT. They are connected. The consumptions are being monitored. Then advanced tools of AI are being used to analyze how and where the losses are happening and how they can be prevented, right?
Right. I'm glad you mentioned AI as well. In fact, is that something that is being used more of late in terms of aligning your production processes with ESG?
Yeah, so the starting point to bring any improvement is to measure what is important. And there is more data, as Mr. Pillai called out. So much of data is getting produced. It is becoming difficult to manage and read through that data, right? So you have to connect your lines and your manufacturing operations, get the relevant data, but then there has to be a layer which then screens that data and converts that into information which is based on which some decision can be taken. And that's where AI comes in a big way.
Mustafa Wajid, if let's talk about carbon market and monetization of ESG. Now, the government has said that carbon trading scheme will be effective by 2026. But how soon do you see it maturing in the country?
It's an interesting topic. We must remember that the legislation that was required to make this happen was passed only in December 22. It's less than 2 years ago. And this is a very big change. The vision of the government is to try and see how to create a carbon market like you have the stock market. So I think carbon markets, the process is on. Policies are being contemplated and drafted. So yes, I think we are optimistic that we will see it kicking off in 2026. The important thing there is that for the first time, India will open up the possibility of monetizing carbon credits. The reality is that carbon credits will come. It's not in the rear view mirror anymore. It's now ahead. It's looking at us in the face. There will be challenges, but good organizations who can understand this and change and adapt their processes. Like, for example, Gagan's team is doing, I think, a very good job of that. I think these will be the people who will generate these carbon credits. Because don't forget, there will always be a sector which will generate carbon debits. You cannot go away from it. For example, the steel industry, for example, the cement industry, and so on and so forth. So I think we are changing that process, and I'm very optimistic that now that the legislation part is over, now the hard work has started. But on a very positive note, it will happen. It's not in the rear view mirror. And decarbonization and sustainability can be monetized in the future and can add to companies' bottom lines.
Mr. Pillai, touching upon what Mr. Wajid was also talking about, regulatory frameworks in the country which exist, and how does that impact ESG, and are you an advocate for more regulations needed for that sector?
See, so far there aren't many regulatory frameworks for ESG. Actually, only the BRSR, which is mandated by SEBI, requires the top 1,000 listed by market capital to go out and report for sustainability. So largely, sustainability reporting or ESG reporting is voluntary, and there are too many frameworks to actually look at and report against. But the thing is that if we want to make it more compliant, or if you want people to be more pushing towards reporting, then there is a need for bringing in more people into the folds of reporting, and not just the top 1,000 listed. Even in the top 1,000 listed, many are still not very sure what they have to report. And what we have currently in terms of regulation in India is very limited. But that is not the only thing that is forcing people to report. Many of our companies or manufacturers are in the supply chain for Europe and other countries. And Europe has a well-defined regulatory requirement, and the subsidiaries operating in there, as well as if you have a bigger market, CSRD has come in Europe, and if you have a bigger market in Europe and you fall as large business, then also you will have to report according to their regulations also. So whether we want the regulation or not, we will be required to comply with the global requirements in a global market. So there is a need where people voluntarily believe. There are big firms again, and there are a lot of big and small firms who are voluntarily reporting, and they are making a sincere effort also. I cannot paint everybody with the same brush, but I do see that there is a large majority still who have to wake up and see that ESG is required as part of, it's a global truth that, if you don't adopt it today, the entire supply chain, the markets, the lenders, the investors, everybody is going to push you towards that direction, and eventually you will have to adopt to that. So some amount of regulation, especially in the climate space and in the decarbonization space, is required. Yeah?
Right. And now I want to ask the question which probably, is one of the important challenges that companies face when it comes to following ESG or incorporating ESG in the business models. So in terms of costs or in terms of processes, what are some of the key changes that you've had to make for Pernod Ricard and BILLIONe, and what are the hurdles that you've faced so far?
I think, first of all, it's more of a notion. It's a mindset. Personal experience has been that, to a large extent, the first few steps that we take in the ESG, it is profit neutral or, in fact, accretive, right? I mean, I'll just allude to some of the examples. Degrammage, right, of glass, degrammage of plastic, market bottle usage, sustainable switch of fuels, these are sustainable under the ESG principles, and hardly they come with a cost. And you improve your efficiencies, you reduce your losses, it's profit, right? I think till the tipping point comes wherein you scratch the barrel, and I think there's a lot of opportunity which lies till we have reached that point. Once you reach that point is when that decision has to be taken in terms of the investments. Some part of that challenge can be addressed when you are making fresher and newer investments. When you're talking of capital investments, you're augmenting capacities. Can we have ESG principles in the design stage itself? So at that time, it is incremental or marginal or no cost, but you have designed for sustainability from the word go. Re-engineering is where the larger investment would come in. And I think to the point Mr. Pillai mentioned, I think policy, support, capital investment, subsidies, but there's a lot to be done till that point. So we should not directly jump. So I'm not advocating that. It's basically, the advocacy is more around improve internally as much you can. And when the decision point comes, the policy support, regulatory support has to be there from an investment standpoint so that we take the right decisions.
Mr. Wajid, the same question to you. What are some of the challenges or hurdles you faced?
Yeah, at BILLIONe, our focus and aim on which we've been making significant progress is to integrate renewable energy, electric mobility, and leveraging AI in the process so that we make the transportation loop completely sustainable. We have been trying out several pilots in this regard, and hopefully we will demonstrate on certain routes or certain sectors the fact that we are using green electricity to run electric trucks and have a platform which is AI-based, which can keep track of the whole thing and ensure efficiency optimization. So by doing this, I think we will, in India, show the way to the world, because we are blessed with a lot of huge resources when it comes to renewables. And if we are able to kind of get that loop going, we have done it in some cases in some pilot studies. We have discovered some new challenges, because how much ever gyan we have, the reality comes out only when we do it practically. And we are on the way, and we believe that next year we will demonstrate a completely 100% sustainable loop using green electricity with green transportation and leveraging the whole digitization piece, which is, of course, will include AI by default. So that's the perception at this stage.
Mr. Pillai, tied up to what both of them said, there's a term called greenwashing. And you're, of course, somebody who is advising companies also in terms of how they can achieve their ESG goals. How do you think companies are able to, in your experience, strike a balance between profitability and sustainability?
If you see sustainability as a separate box and you want to do it as, an activity, then, it is a struggle to do that. But if you include that into your business as usual operations, if you bring, the risk assessment of sustainability as part of our overall sustainability of the business, then it is not such a difficult aspect. I think Mr. Sethi has already mentioned that, if you save on reducing waste, if you save on energy efficiency, if you save on water consumption, you are not going to make loss. You are definitely going to make profit. But these are not short-term things. Initially there is a capital expense, capex upfront. You have to invest to get into sustainability, whether you have to move to renewables or to any other greener mode, you have to invest. But if you are looking at your business in a longer term, and as we were discussing, sustainability like digitization, it is going to happen. And everything that is going around us, if you look at the global pressure, the consumer market, the investment market, everybody is going to make you adapt to ESG requirement. So, whenever I advise, I will always ask them to look for, longer term, and all the investment that you are putting is actually going to come back in good profits only.
So, Mr. Sethi, first, how big is the role of authentic ESG practices, according to you? I mean, from Pernod Ricard India's experience.
It's very important. You need to be very clear and transparent, both in setting the initiatives that we have set out. So all our objectives, which are as per the ESG, they're all in the public domain. They are as per the SDG. They've been reported in terms of what we want to achieve. So we are very vocal in communicating what we want to achieve. The second part is also around, I would say, is the engagement of our stakeholders. That's equally important, especially coming to the customers, the consumers. some of the initiatives like One for the Planet that we undertook, which was removing the monocottons out of our products, which was a bold move, and transparency with the end user, which was the consumer customer. It's a lot of engagement. And we were very upfront and transparent in terms of why we are doing this. And we were surprised the amount of support that we got, not only from the regulators, but also from the customers and consumers. So I think transparent reporting, being very clear, and then also driving the alignment with the business objectives. So in Pernod Ricard, ESG objectives are part of the business objectives. So there's a cascade of ESG goals which happens till from the top of the board to down to the front line.
Right. We have very less time, but Mr. Wajid, I would want your point of view on this as well.
Yeah,
Briefly, if you can.
Yeah, unlike Gagan, who has to sort of push together business and sustainability objectives, we have a luxury. Sustainability is our business. And we are trying to align the profit with the sustainability, not the other way around.
The other way around,
So that's, we have the luxury of doing that. So hopefully we'll do a good job.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that very engaging first session that we had on day 2 of NDTV World Summit. Thank you so much. We'll have to wind up this conversation, unfortunately, right now. But thank you all, gentlemen, for this talk.